I know the units are farads, so in this case it's a 22 microfarad capacitor. I don't know if you could see that. I guess the maximum voltage that it wants is 50 volts. I'm less than 10% of that, so that's fine. We're at 3 volts. I don't know much about capacitors. I'm going to hopefully learn right now and just get some circuits going and see what they do. I know that they are supposed to act sort of like batteries. From what I've heard, if you have a circuit, so for example, let's say we have an LED circuit. So I'm going to put in a resistor. This is a 1K resistor, and we put an LED in, and we put this to ground. Now, of course, we plug this in, it turns on, and if we plug out the power, it turns off. Plug it back in, turns back on. So what I've heard that capacitors will do is kind of smooth out that interruption and keep the LED on when it turns off. To test that, I'm going to, I guess, put it in, I guess, in front of the LED. His legs are kind of odd. So if I plug that in and then I plug the LED in and then I plug in my power, so I have resistor going to the capacitor to the LED, then nothing happens. Actually, on the camera I can see a flickering of the LED. I could have sworn it was on when I first plugged it in. So I guess now is a good time to zoom out and check the voltage and stuff and see what's happening. So this is the opposite of what I was expecting. I was expecting it to help the LED. So the capacitor has 1.9 volts. The LED should have 1.4, I guess, by that calculation. 1.5. So what does this mean? So we can see right now it's in series, and somehow the capacitor is keeping voltage even plugged out. So it really is kind of like a battery. It still has 1. It is dropping very slowly. And the LED, I mean, the LED should have no volts, but it has a negative. I don't understand what's happening there. I'm going to check real quick how I can, I guess if I just sit here long enough, it will go out. I'm going to check real quick and see how to, I guess, discharge it. I think that's the right word. So I'll be right back. To discharge it, apparently, we just use a resistor. So what I'm going to do is get my clips. Hello. So that's on there. All right, so we have 0.08 volts. What? It was much higher before. And he's going up. What the heck? Anyway, so they said to discharge a capacitor. I guess I should take this off. All we do is we plug it into a resistor and we short it with a resistor, sort of like on purpose. So I'm going to get a resistor, say like a 10K. So there's my resistor, and he's going to be our discharger. So if we plug this in, then he should feed himself the power and discharge. That's the idea. So we're just making a really simple circuit where he's just connected right there. So let's see if the voltage has left him. And yeah, so it's 0 right now. All right, so I'm going to leave this connected on him. And I'm going to move him back over here. And we have our probe still connected there. Little alligators do not want to let go. So let's plug in power again and see what happens. Nothing is happening. Oh, my resistor is in negative. Oops. All right, there we go. So let's plug this in again and see what happens. Wow. The LED blinked for a second. The voltage on the capacitor went to 1.8. I don't know why the LED just blinked on like that. I'm going to try and discharge it. So we can see it dropping rapidly when we plug it into the resistor. So that's cool. So that means if I plug it back in now, will it also blink again? Let's see. I'm going to put it in right now. It blinked again. I'm so confused by what's happening. So our voltage is again 1.7. And if we plug it into this resistor here, then we can discharge it again. So now he's back down to 0. So definitely I'm doing something wrong. The capacitor is allowing this guy to turn on, but it's just for a super split second. Now I do have this oscilloscope that I just got. And it's also supposed to, I guess, like chart the voltage change. So maybe what I could do is leave this plugged into my capacitor and then plug this new dude into my LED and maybe get a better idea of what's happening. Because I'm going to look up, like how to use a capacitor, but I always like to plug it in first and hopefully not die, but get some innocent experimenting. All right. I think that works. So I'm going to plug this capacitor back in over here. So it's at, I don't know what VAVE means. I guess that's what's happening now, 1.42? I don't know. Meanwhile, the capacitor, I forgot to show this. The capacitor is doing really weird things. So capacitor's voltage is dropping. This guy looks like he's going crazy, just up and down. And if I cut power, then this guy is still going crazy. So capacitor's at 1.47. If I plug it out, what happens to the LED? He basically drops to 0. And if I discharge this guy again, so he discharges there to 0. Okay. I'm gonna just plug in the LED and just make sure that I'm dealing with sort of a simple circuit that works. So I'm gonna plug this in. Okay, so the LED still works. I was thinking maybe I destroyed it or something, but what shows is actual voltage. I'm so confused by this. This light is annoying. If I plug it in again, I wonder what happens if I turn this off. Yeah, it just turns off instantly, so that didn't work. So not even in parallel does it work the way it's supposed to work. What? I mean, I know it works. I just don't know what I'm doing. So not even in parallel can I get this to work, really. Oh, and there is a negative lead on it, right? Yeah, it's negative. This means that the short pin is negative, just like LEDs. So I don't really know how it's supposed to work. I can get it to charge, but I can't get him to share his power when our power is gone. So he's kind of being greedy. Or the thing is, I don't know how to ask him to share his power. I guess I'm going to look up a schematic and test this baby out. I am back and I have the schematic. So when I was searching for an LED capacitor schematic, one of the posts that I saw was basically exactly what we had, where in the beginning when I plugged in the capacitor, the LED faded out. The other times it just completely turns off. But anyway, this guy on Stack Exchange named Grebu posted this and said that we need to put it in a parallel, which I thought I did, and it still is in parallel right now, actually. So we can compare this and see if I can find out what's wrong with it. So we have our power coming in, and then it has a choice to make, or not a choice. It can go both ways. You can go through the capacitor, or through, I guess this is not really a parallel connection. So in this situation, the LED stayed on. So that means the capacitor charged, but the LED stayed on by drawing power from the resistor through this blue cable. So that's interesting. It means that this guy kind of stops current because, oh, we should test that. I should test that real quick. Because if the LED turns off only when the capacitor is providing it power in series from the resistor, then there's something up with this capacitor. Because once I plug in this alternate connection, the LED stays on and the capacitor still continues to charge, or it gets charged, I should say. Whereas in this one, the capacitor itself goes directly to ground. This is a difference. This is a difference, yeah. In my own, the capacitor's only path to ground is through the LED, as we can see right here. So I guess a true parallel connection would be that he has his own path to ground. In this case, power comes in, and it can go through the resistor, through the LED, or it could just go through the capacitor. I'm assuming capacitors have very low resistance, so this is going to be the primary path. So let's test this out and see. And then after, what I'll do is I'll test to see if it really does block current or if something else is going on. Because the voltage across the LED was like a 1.4, 1.5, which I know is not enough to turn it on, but that's still something. You know, I'm gonna test it real quick. I'm pretty curious about that. So I'm going to split these guys up so that I can get in the middle of it with my multimeter and measure the current. So I'm gonna plug this out. You know what, let me make sure he's discharged. Plug him into our handy discharger. This is really cool, I like this. Wasn't my idea. And plug this guy into row 32 or so, 33, whatever. This blue guy. I'm gonna plug in the LED over here. So power comes in, goes to the capacitor, but there's a big gap here, right? And then it goes to the LED, which is grounded. So we'll put our multimeter between these two to create the circuit, and then we can get a direct current reading. I'm gonna move this to current, which is over here. Let's do 200 milliamps. Okay, now let's check and see what happens. I'm a little scared. That's so strange. So it's zero current. So it is kind of blocking current. But for a second, this little guy turned on. I am very confused by that. And if we check the voltage of this guy, we get a 1.5, but it's dropping kind of quick. 1.47, 1.46. So let's plug him into our handy dandy discharger. And he should drop to 0, which he is 0. So he really does seem to drop the current. And that's why he's not turning on. So that helps. So now let's try and make the circuit and see what the difference is. We already know that when we provide an alternate line of power to the LED, it will stay on, which makes sense. So I guess these guys are really designed to work in parallel. So let's see what happens. So this is our... Maybe we could draw it this way. Now the resistor is over here. Why would the capacitor not need any resistance? Is that really the way? I'm worried to plug anything in without using resistors, to be honest. So I'm going to try it with resistors first. Not to disrespect the great Grebu, but I think I'm going to try it this way. So we already have our 1K resistor in. Now what we need to do is basically give it a path through the capacitor to ground. So I'm going to plug in the capacitor, and then we're just going to plug in a cable to ground. Okay, so we have resistor going to the capacitor, who's going to this cable and being grounded. So it looks very much like this. Whoop, 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 right? And then so to the right of that, we're going to just plug in our LED, because these lines are already there, right? Like all these rows are already connected. So if we just plug in the LED, then that should be it. Okay, so let's take a look at this. So we have power coming off the resistor, going through the capacitor to ground, or he goes to the LED, and then he goes back to ground. And that is exactly what happens in our schematic. Comes off. He can go through the capacitor, go back to ground, or he can go through the LED and go back to ground. So let's try this out and see what happens. So we do have power. And now I'm going to plug out power in 3, 2, 1. Pew! Yeah, I don't think this is working. Because he's supposed to stay on. Such is what I've been told. I don't know. Let's take some readings just so we kind of know at least what's happening. LED, I'm expecting to see 1.8. And we do have 1.8. Capacitor, I have no idea what he would be. Also 1.8. And this is 2.2 microfarad. Mine is much higher. Mine is 22. So, oh, this is microfarad. Sorry, this is millifarad. I'm at microfarad. So mine is actually way less than this guy. Let's see if he holds his charge when we plug out the power. Because he's supposed to discharge at some point. He's at 1.8. Which makes some sense, right? Because in parallel, each path shares the same voltage, or is the same voltage, but they share current. It's a 1000 ohm resistor, so 1.5 volts would be 1.5 milliamps. Alright, I'm going to plug up power and see what happened to this guy. He is dropping. So the LED has voltage, but just not enough to turn on. So I'm noticing now that my version really kind of messed up the resistor. I have a resistor coming in, but then I guess once the capacitor is supposed to feed the LED, he's kind of skipped. Because I just don't want to give straight power to the capacitor. But I also need one, I guess. If we look at this as two separate circuits, which I think is the point, this guy is going to feed the LED after this is cut. So we do need a resistor in the circuit. And in my own, I guess, if we kind of draw it around these components, there's no resistor in there. So I think I will do that. But I guess it would be like this. And then I would put a resistor in, another resistor. So, sorry for all that car noise in the background. I think there's some shipments coming in next door. We have power coming in, and it can go through the capacitor to ground, or it can go through another resistor to the LED. Although I just realized that it's not connected properly. Okay, there we go. And then when we pretend this isn't here, then the capacitor can feed the LED, but it still has a resistor there. So let's see if this changes anything. So LED is on, that's a good sign. And if we cut power, I don't know. Future Mixie here. I didn't realize at the time, but the LED is fading out and the capacitor is working the way that it should, but I just need a much bigger capacitor to make it very obvious, which I realize pretty soon in the video. So I'll resume the video. Let's check our voltage and stuff and see. This capacitor now has 2.56 volts and the LED has a 1.8. And when we cut power, capacitor is dropping. And it seemed to have dropped initially very quickly. Let me see if I can get the oscilloscope working, because I think that this is really where it sort of shines. So let's plug on our positive and plug Negative. I'm gonna kill my light so that you can see this better. I don't know which one is I need to look that up, but we have 2 point something, and then I'm going to make the scale a little wider so we can see, like in a 1 second range. So we have our voltage, and it seems to be at the top right there, whatever, you know, whatever this is. So when I cut power, let's see what happens. So it is dropping. It has like a sudden drop. You see the yellow line? And when I plug it in, it just skyrockets back up. Maybe my capacitor is too small. Maybe there's some bigger ones here, but I figured a small one would be a good start. So I plugged it out again, and we can see it dropping, fading, going down, I guess, to 0. I thought there was also like a charge time on these capacitors, so I'm definitely not doing something right here. This is really cool though, how we can see, you know, like a chart. I would love to get it away from all this text, but kind of at a loss of what to test right now, to be honest, because my LED is not staying on. Even though this guy seems to have a charge, and he seems to distribute the charge when we plug out the power, because he loses his voltage, right? So you would think it'd be flowing through the circuit, but the LED does not get illuminated, or it doesn't stay illuminated, or is it just so sudden? I don't know. I guess I'll try a bigger one. I'm gonna plug this guy into the discharger, so we can see it fading slowly. And then I'm going to plug it in here, and we should see it drop rapidly. So there it is, dropping very rapidly. And I guess it's at 0 right now. That's kind of cool to see visually. So I'm going to plug him out. And then I'm going to get a bigger one. This one. So this is a 470. And the one I had before is a 22. I think it was. So this should be a big difference. Okay. So this guy is in. Let me plug in my contraption. Alright, so let's plug in power. Hopefully nothing explodes. Oh. Something just happened. Oh yeah. Now it's working. So my little guy just wasn't... This little green guy, he's just too tiny. The 22 microfarad. So what we need to do is figure out the math behind this, so that we can make more intelligent decisions, or I can make more intelligent decisions in the future. So let's see it. Now I'm really excited to see. That's really cool how it slowly fades out. And he fades on and then he fades out. So it kind of smooths everything out. So we can see it's maxed out, and we plug out power, and pew, he fades slowly. That's really cool. And then he charges also. Now we can see the charging actually has a curve. On the 22 microfarad capacitor, it just kind of jumped up to the top. Now I don't know if it's really the top. I need to make this work better, but the 2.61 volts. But yeah, so that's cool. So we can see that he fades out. So he maintains power, and we could imagine that if we had a blip in our power, like it just turned on and off real quick, he really doesn't lose a lot of illumination. So that is pretty cool. LED does have its own resistance, which I need to remember too. So maybe it would work without this. I guess I could try it. I'm a little scared, but hopefully it'll be okay. I'm gonna plug it in. Power again. Yeah. It does fade slowly, but we can tell. So basically, by adding resistors, we spread out, I guess, how fast it discharges. Let's do another 1K. Yeah, the key is that when there's a mini circuit between the capacitor and the LED, it will basically be a series circuit with a resistor in the middle of it. So that's a key to control the discharge current, I guess, or the discharge speed. So I'm pretty happy with this. Pew. So that's cool. So we have the ability to, I guess, smooth out some power irregularities and keep the LED on for longer. So I think what I need to do is figure out the math behind capacitors and then compare it and kind of try and demonstrate it and figure out, first of all, how much he can power, because I don't know what a farad really is, and how long it takes to charge and discharge based on my current. I guess it's current based or voltage based or something like that. But yes, so I did have a question, which is a bit confusing to me. So let me plug out, and it's already zoomed in. Okay, so from what I understand, we've seen that LEDs must be plugged in the right way. The long leg is positive and the short leg is negative. So we put it in that way. We know that when we turn on the power, we have power coming from the positive going through our network and then going out to the negative. So meaning the positive leg is connected to the positive side and the negative leg is connected to the zero voltage side. When this capacitor discharges though, what I'm confused about is how is he even turning on the LED? So he gets power from here and he's charging. Then when he discharges out of his negative leg, that would mean that the LED is getting power from his negative and going through his positive. So how does that work? Let me connect up again and get one more measurement. Turn our back on our light. So negative right here. All right. So let's see our voltage. Let's plug in our power. We have 2.57 volts across the capacitor. And if we plug out, then he fades. So he's still oriented this way. We still have positive and negative. Does that mean it's flowing backwards? Or forwards? It's flowing forwards if this is positive, right? I think the simplest solution here is the LED does need the current to flow from positive to negative. So that would mean that when the capacitor is discharging, he's actually like vomiting out the current, you know, like he's not eating it and then pooping it out. He eats it and then he vomits it back around the circuit. Sorry for the terrible analogy, but that's what jumped in my head. So in other words, we know that current goes around. In this case, it's going to charge the capacitor and power the LED. So we have our positive leg and our negative leg, we could say. So it's forward. I think they call it forward biased. Maybe I'm using that incorrectly, but the LED wants to go forward. So going forward. And my question was, if the capacitor is charging with its positive and its negative leads or whatever these are called, when he discharges, if he goes this way, right, when this is gone, in other words, there's no more power, so there's no more circuit here, so this is off. And now he decides to share his power, which I don't even know why that happens either. I really need to do research. But the point is, he charges this way, and I was thinking when he discharges, he would connect his positive to his negative and go this way, but then the LED would not be able to turn on. So that would mean, if what I'm saying is right, then he reverses it and keeps the LED being powered. Does current ever show up backwards? Maybe that's what I should be checking. Maybe I should connect these in series between the charging resistor. So the first resistor. Maybe that's what I should do. Because I really want to understand what's happening with the current here. All right. So we have the same connection, but now we have our meter in the middle. And let's check current. And let's plug it in. Okay, so no current is flowing right now, which makes sense. He's charged, so we have 0. When we plug him out, we still have nothing. What the heck? Oh, but it does show negative. So right now it's positive, even though it's short because it's charging. When we plug it out, he goes negative. So it does make sense. Now, these are tiny values. Oh yeah, that makes more sense. I had it on the wrong setting. That makes a lot of sense. Okay, that's pretty cool. So it does take the power in the traditional direction that we expect, like positive to negative. But then when it discharges, he vomits. He's a vomiter. He's not a pooper. He's a vomiter. Is there a better analogy for that? Can somebody please tell me? I don't want to keep saying that, but it's the only thing that comes into my mind. The dude is just vomiting back his power. So positive, taking power, negative, giving power. Cool. That makes a lot of sense to me. Because that was nagging me for a little bit. Like how the LED stayed on when I thought that the capacitor would just poop out his power in the same direction that we've been going in. But really, he regurgitates it. All right. Wonderful. So let's plug out our guy. Plug out our other guy. My power is off. Let me put him into his discharger just to make sure. Pew! And then I'm gonna plug out this little dude. Man, the meters are really incredible. They tell you so many things. So that works out really well. I think I have a decent handle on at least how to make this circuit reliably. Let me plug it in one more time since I just changed something. Make sure. He turned on slowly and he fades out. On and fades out. So what I'm going to do is probably look up the math and try to just do some samples or examples and then go from there. So cool.